Well, welcome to the Esports Performance Summit. We have a special guest with us today, Jake Middleton, and the esports trainer. And Jake, do you mind giving us a little bit of background on yourself and as it comes to esports specifically?
Yeah, so I am a fitness trainer, a certified trainer that's been working in esports for about 4 years now. I first got in when I was a junior in college, and I'd always been a gamer myself. I was a competitive gamer, played competitive Halo, and so I kind of got this idea to kind of merge pretty much fitness and esports because I knew down the road that this is something that inevitably would be important for gamers of all levels, from the professional all the way down to the amateur. Really helping them improve their performance was the main goal, but obviously, of course, improve their health and wellness as well.
Well, and talk to me about, I know a passion for yours, and you tipped your hat to this a little bit just now, is really that intersection between personal physical fitness and esports, which to some people may think, what do those two things have to do with each other? And I know you have a lot to say about that. I'd love to hear you kind of start get, I mean, maybe even tied into your background, like where you first started discovering and seeing those connection points and what some of those are.
Yeah, so for me, I've always been obsessed with like how exercise provided all these incredible benefits for the body, but I really got into and learned about how it was beneficial for the brain. Some of the benefits, of course, you improve blood flow to the brain. There's a thing called neurogenesis where it actually grows new neurons in specific regions of the brain. One of them is the hippocampus, super important for learning new information and spatial navigation. So for esports, that's basically what's super important to them as well. Improve executive functions, cognitive performance. And so seeing all of that, to me, it was like it makes it's a perfect connection of why gamers, especially those at the top level, need to be exercising on a regular basis. And I compare it to like other athletes, if race car drivers, even those like a fighter pilot as well. They're in a situation where they're sitting down, they're pushing buttons and things in a very similar environment, just like an esports athlete. And the demands that they're going on inside their bodies is actually very similar to what's going on to when players are playing at a competition. So it's super important to get those benefits. But the important thing to understand is the distinction between if you are physically fit, just because you can lift 300 pounds or run a 5-minute mile, that's not going to necessarily correlate to improved esports performance. You're not going to play better than someone who, say, can't do that. The main thing is if you have a competition, it's the preparation that you have for that competition. So if you're 3 months out, making sure that you're exercising, getting enough movement in each day, each week, the things that you're eating, making sure you're eating healthier food options rather than unhealthier food options, sleeping well on a consistent basis. Those are kind of like your foundation. So if you're doing that, that's going to help prepare you for the tournament. More so if you didn't do any of those things. And it's going to give you tons of benefits as well. And on the flip side, of course, esports is something where there's a lot of repetitive stress from the fine motor movements. There's a lot of problems with injuries. So by doing these things, it also helps reduce those risks and can extend your career as a player.
A lot of great stuff right there. I want to go back a little bit to when you mentioned as far as some of the specific benefits of exercise in the brain, because I think understanding that, not theory, but that foundational component is really significant for people really understanding and believing you that the diet, sleep, and exercise leading up to a competition really, really does make a difference. And you talked about, so can you go back and list some of those key benefits the exercise brings to the brain? You mentioned like cognitive performance. Could you go back through a few of those and maybe we can kind of dialogue about those a little bit?
Yeah. So there's actually not really a whole lot of specific research in esports on exercise and cognitive performance, but you can draw everything from the research in the traditional sports space or even out of that domain as well. But the main thing is exercise. It's still not totally unknown why it benefits the brain, but most people, most scientists at least, think it's because of the increased blood flow, the response from exercise in terms of like the hormones. The biggest one is a hormone called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and so that's pretty much what actually does like all the magic in the brain in terms of helping increase the connections between synapses, growing new neurons, repairing damaged neurons, all of those things. Exercise is specifically aerobic exercise. Most of the research goes off of running, jogging, or cycling, swimming. Really increases BDNF in the brain. and all those benefits come from. So the research, what they've done and they've seen for cognitive performance, and this is for people of all ages too. A lot of the research on older adults, but I've seen research as well on younger adults, which is more tailored, of course, to the esports audience. So a lot of that research on cognitive performance, they found things like information processing. So the ability to take in information, such as from a screen, that was increased. The ability to hold on to multiple different types of information at a time. The flexibility to switch from one task to another. As well as many like just focused attention. All of those increased with exercise. And when it comes to things like those who need, ADHD and need medication and things like that, exercise just does just as good of a job as a lot of medication, even for things like with mental health issues like anxiety and depression, which is another aspect of esports that a lot of players have to deal with. And so that's just another benefit is, of course, the important connection. Exercise provides all these benefits for the brain, but having good brain health and mental health obviously influences the body. So just that strong connection between the body and mind.
Yeah, well, and I really appreciate you going into some of that depth, and obviously I'm sure you could talk for a long, long time on all those components, but I think it's so helpful, and because there's just this natural dynamic, whether someone's been in esports for a long time or is newer to gaming, you think, oh, well, you're just sitting there. Like, what difference does it make? But you already made the connection to a race car driver or a fighter pilot. And I think about golfing also. Back in the day, traditional golfers weren't thought of as being really physically fit, strong people. But then you have like a Tiger Woods and other people come through who really took their physical fitness seriously, and they become some of the best golfers in history. And you notice when you watch professional golf now, which I don't do much, but I see the pictures and I follow it enough that you don't see anyone out there who's not really fit and really in shape because they realize it makes a difference.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's something that's happening right now. 4 years ago, this wasn't going on very much, but now most professional organizations realize that more health and wellness professionals are getting into this space, kind of help growing the industry and making a push for this type of stuff. And so there's definitely a big change right now to where you're really starting to see more of this, and it's just going to continue to grow down the road.
I'd love for you to help kind of paint a picture of the present landscape in esports and like serious gamers as far as their current, generally speaking, kind of the health profile of most gamers. And the reason I want to do that is because I think it's really easy for people to listen to this interview or watch this interview and think, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't need that. And you kind of rationalize reasons why they don't need to get the extra sleep or the exercise or take their diet seriously, because they don't always realize how bad of a place they may be in. And so I'd love to hear you talk about what do you see over and over again as far as mistakes that gamers are making right now that you help them with?
Yeah, so I was actually in that position. When I used to compete, back in high school, I did all these things, that you shouldn't have done, right? But I also played sports and stuff too, and so I learned a lot from that. But I think as of right now, there's not a lot of research on exactly the habits of gamers, particularly at certain levels. But I have seen there is survey research out now at like the college level and with just like general community of players. But I think the biggest place where I think a lot of problems are that you can start off in helping with that I've done is player sleep. So a lot of them, depending on what age you're at, if you're in school or whatever, you come after school, you maybe are playing a sport or something like that. After that, you go home, you play for a while, right? You're going to be playing before bed. Unfortunately, electronic screens before bed, not a great idea. It suppresses melatonin, it makes it more difficult, harder to go to sleep. So that's something that I work on, especially with players at the professional level who, some of them stream at night as well before they go to bed. So that's something to help them with. And there's things you can do if you are going to, be gaming or doing that, just trying to incorporate things that can help them out, using like blue light blocking glasses while they're viewing screens, trying to make sure that they're at least not getting on their phone before bed, if what they're gaming, staying away from social media, just things like that to help them out. That's definitely one area that I focus on. Helping them develop a bedtime ritual is definitely super important, something relaxing rather than gaming. But again, it makes sense to a lot of people, but they don't always do it, But I think um, it's one of those things where you kind of learn, after a while, this is something I can't get good sleep. Why am I staying up so much? I'm developing insomnia, and just trying to help them with. It's one of those things that you eventually learn on your own. But what I try to do is try to get to the players before they get to that point, so they can hopefully, start doing these things. So because I don't want them to get there, and I know once they get there, they don't want to be there as well.
Do you see much insomnia with esports players?
Yeah, quite a bit actually.
Really?
Yeah, it depends. So I wouldn't necessarily say insomnia. Of course, I'm not going to diagnose anything, right?
Right, of course. Well, yeah, I mean,
But
there's a broad category there, but trouble sleeping. We'll just say trouble sleeping.
trouble sleeping, yeah, that's I would say, yeah, for sure, 100%. I think it just comes from them playing at night. Then the things going on during the day and stuff. Gaming is extremely cognitively engaging, and then once you stop gaming and try to go to bed, it's just not going to be easy to do. But due to your daily routine, due to your schedule, that's probably the only time you can game for some situations. So again, I just try to help them with little tips and tricks and things that they can utilize to help reduce those aspects so they can get a better night's sleep. Because that's, I mean, huge for of course, short-term and long-term health, but obviously their performance as well.
Do you deal with many clients who are out of school and in the workforce and trying to getting in the esports and gaming?
Yeah, I've worked with some older. I say older. I'd say more
Relatively
like late
speaking.
20s,
Right.
relatively speaking.
Right.
Yeah, who are kind of trying to do that as well. And so definitely seeing all the different aspects: players in school, players out of school and work, and then of course people who are doing this full time as well.
And I guess same profile for the people in the workforce. I mean, they're working all day. They come home, and maybe they have a little bit more flexibility in terms of their scheduling, I guess. But still, you go to work all day, commute home, dinner, and then you end up with the same time constraints that a student would have, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then like you said with the dinner, like the nutrition aspect, if you're at work all day, you usually come home, you're mentally exhausted. You don't want to make, cook dinner, a healthy meal. You opt in for just, maybe grabbing some fast food real quick or something, from the pantry. Usually not the healthier options, and so that kind of, is a bad kind of path to go down because then, you're consistently doing that on a regular basis. And, if you're preparing for a tournament or something, just like any other athlete, that's going to impact you.
I remember years ago, I was hiking in the Grand Canyon, and they had this sign on some little bulletin board up toward the top of the trail, and it talked about, I'll get some of the details will be wrong, but basically said, it said stop like once every hour and like kick your feet up for like 7 minutes or something like that, even if you're not tired, and you'll go longer, harder, and faster, basically. And it's that counterintuitive dynamic of thinking, well, I'm not going to stop at an hour because I'm not tired yet. And I'm not going to sit down for 7 to 10 minutes and take a break because I'm going to get behind. I'm not going to make the progress I want to make. But over the long term, you last longer, stay healthier, and actually go further faster than you would have if you didn't take the breaks. And which is very counterintuitive, but it's
Yeah.
wisdom. And I hear that a lot in what you're saying. Some people may think, oh, I can cut this corner and cut that corner. And in the short term, see benefits, things, or at least it's not hurting you. But over time, people are having a hard time and having issues, hence your whole vocation.
Yep, that's when you see injuries and things like burnout and things that are very hard to treat, if you get them. So it's the best thing is prevention.
Talk to me about common injuries you see with esports athletes. You mentioned trouble sleeping. We can start there. I'd love to learn more about like what does that look like commonly. I know everyone's different. There's variations, but common things that you see.
Yeah, in terms of injuries, nothing too crazy that I've seen. It's mostly just like pain, people having low back pain, hand pain, pain in their forearms, things like tendonitis, tennis elbow. Um, those are the most common that I've seen. A couple people eye fatigue, but nothing actually like in terms of something. But I do know other professionals in the space who definitely see a lot more than what I see. But I've seen the articles and too about, players developing collapsed lungs, which not exactly sure what that's from. Most
Right.
likely
I was
like
going
an
to ask.
inactive lifestyle,
Wow.
probably poor posture as well. Um, so that's definitely an interesting an issue that, definitely being addressed. But definitely a lot of these problems and burnout is one of them as well, which especially at the professional level is really, really taking hard on for a lot of players.
Yeah, and talk to me more about like common habits you see, and you've mentioned this a little bit, and I know some of these things may be kind of just common information for you, but I really wanted to help increase the relatability for everyone participating in the summit and listening. They're going to be all across the spectrum in terms of gaming and esports. And again, there's that dynamic where it's easy to say, "Oh, well, that's not me. That's not an issue for me." And again, getting that short-term thinking mindset that ends up hurting them over the long run. Um, so again, could you describe a little bit more of kind of like the average gaming lifestyle in terms of time spent per day? And I know it varies, but like just common things that you see, and kind of a common diet and things like that. Could you speak to that a little bit? Just
Yeah,
and then
I'll go off of I'll say like your typical college gamer
there you go.
because I've worked
Perfect.
with a lot of college players, and so
Perfect.
I kind of go with there. So here's a student who has responsibilities with school, and they're playing for a varsity team. They're playing for their school. A lot of them for average, I'd say, because you get a mix, of course. You get some people who have that athletic background. You get those who don't, and So I'd say the average is most of them they don't exercise on a regular basis. Um, the only movement that they would get would be, I guess, walking from class to class. Um, and this is just what I've seen. This is just a very small sample size too.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's what I'm asking for. It's still very helpful.
yeah, in terms of like the nutrition, it's kind of what's convenient, what's the easiest thing I can get. The vending machine right by um, the performance center, or you know, um, and then of course with sleep too. Any college student struggles with sleep for various reasons, um, so they do as well. But surprisingly, at least half, because I always ask this question when I work with them, is at least half are getting about 8 hours. At least that's what they're telling me. So.
No, that's significant. Do you ever slap a Fitbit on them and test them?
No, I wish that would actually be quite nice to have some sort of wearable technology. That's actually something I do encourage, especially for the movement aspect. In terms of getting enough physical activity each week, that's an easy way to track and know how much you're getting. And in terms, of course, for prolonged sitting, of course, sitting is the new smoking, and it is extremely harmful to health, but it can also impact performance too, because it increases stress. And so having like a wearable, like a Fitbit, something that can notify you, every hour, like, hey, you need to get 100 more steps. You get up, go do something, and you come back. It's extremely helpful.
Talk to me about like maybe a typical gaming routine. So in class most of the day, of course, obviously college students it varies because their schedules are much more unique. But like how many hours a day do you typically see? Again, you say a varsity college player. How many hours a day on average would you say they're probably putting in? And then second question is average length of time continuous.
I'd say I have seen research which for college players right now, anywhere from 3 to 10 hours a day.
Wow.
I would say probably on average, the teams probably meet at least 3 days a week, probably practice for 3 hours. Then, of course, they go and play on their own, or with their teammates, once they're out of the traditional practice space. But I'd say probably on average around 5 hours.
Okay. And probably that's usually probably one sitting, I'm assuming, is not a lot of back and forth, or is it a lot of I assume it's like you sit down, you probably kind of grind for a while.
Yeah, that's usually, yeah. I'll probably go to, their where they practice as a team. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, after outside of the practice, they can stay there and they'll just kind of, you can keep playing. But of course, if they're practicing there, they could always go home, or somewhere else and then continue playing as well. So you might get somewhat of a little break in between.
Right. Right. Well, let's shift over a little bit into some solutions. You've mentioned diet and sleep and exercise are kind of the core three components. You've gone into a lot of different kind of specifics that you see in your clients, and specifically kind of using varsity college athletes as kind of a template in that sense. Let's talk through some solutions, like some fixes in terms of, what are some quick wins people can get regarding. I like to talk about sleep, diet, and exercise because you obviously there's lots of constraints with time and other issues. But I know that you probably know a lot of quick tips and stuff that can help people get quick wins that can make a difference over the long term. Do you mind kind of starting with sleep and talking about what are some things people can do to make a big difference quick?
Yeah, the quickest thing you could do, set up a pre bedtime ritual. So like 30 minutes before you go to bed, uh, get some hot tea, read a paperback book, listen to some relaxing music. That'll help relax the body and mind, get ready for bed, rather than doing something mentally or physically engaging. Another thing
I
would
know you
be
said paperback book, not Kindle.
paperback book, no
That's
Kindle.
right.
I know some of those now they do have like a blue light blocking software, but still, I'd totally recommend just go for the paperback.
And why the tea?
Tea, just herbal tea. It's very relaxing.
Obviously
Um,
non-caffeinated.
Non-caffeinated, yes. So that'd be my next tip. Avoid caffeine, especially before bedtime. If you're going to drink caffeine, consume it in the morning or early afternoon. Um, it has a half-life of about 6 hours. So I mean, if you're consuming it, it's even if you go to sleep, you're not going to probably have the best quality. Um, the next one would be, of course, you could take like a warm shower before bed. That actually helps. The shower will increase your body temperature. But then afterwards, with the increase in body temperature, your body will automatically try to lower that temperature. So you'll cool off after the shower, which actually can help you get to sleep afterwards and promotes relaxation as well. Um, those are kind of like the three probably quick tips I'd give.
That's fantastic. What about when it comes to nutrition, diet?
Nutrition diet, just try to eat more whole foods, whole grains, fruits, vegetables. Try to reduce processed and artificial foods. And then aim for moderation. I'm all about moderation, especially when it comes to nutrition. If you like unhealthier food options, I know I do. Try to eat, each day or each week, 70, 80% healthy, good foods and reward yourself. Eat the unhealthier foods, at an optimal time, of course, too. Um, as a reward for eating well most of the week. Before competition, always eat lower glycemic foods. Higher glycemic foods will spike blood sugar, and what that does is it can impact your mental and physical performance. So you kind of get that mental, like if Thanksgiving, you eat a huge meal afterwards, you,
Then you lay down, take a nap, and watch football.
yep. So not what you want to do before a competition. So
Okay, and in specific, you said low glycemic food. Can you break that down and help us remind us what that means?
So low glycemic would be basically when you eat, it's carbohydrates, is what it's talking about. So lower glycemic would mean you eat the carbohydrate and it doesn't spike, it doesn't immediately go into your bloodstream
So
or
not
raise your blood sugar.
avoid sugars, like avoid like processed sugars and stuff, basically.
Basically, yes, you could still eat some carbohydrates. Some carbohydrates, like complex carbohydrates, have a slower response. Um, so, but definitely it gets tricky because even some fruits and vegetables, some are lower glycemic, some are higher glycemic. I definitely highly recommend just kind of like doing some research on foods you like to eat before. But of course, like a protein bar, stuff like that would be beneficial before.
What would you do? You have any recommendation? Because you talked about a common dynamic with gamers. There's a vending machine outside the gaming facility or something else. There's always like that quick. I'm going to grab this, or the professional grabbing fast food on the way home. Is there like a quick something you can say? Hey, when you're in a rush, always have this thing on hand. You know what I mean? This can be a quick go-to. You can grab and eat. It's easy. Are there a few things that come to mind in that regard?
Yeah, I'd say like some sort of fruit, like an apple or banana, um, especially if you have peanut butter too. Peanut butter is great because it's got a lot of good fat and it's extremely filling. Protein bar, very good as well, or even a protein shake. Those are kind of like some definitely go-to things that you can bring with you. Of course, there's a lot of other options as well, but
Right.
those are kind of some I'd go with.
Perfect. No, that's really helpful. And let's jump into exercise. And again, obviously, these are all topics that much could be said, but what are some exercise tips that you recommend, again, that people can start doing pretty much right away and probably see material improvement?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're not exercising right now, just trying to go out and walk a little bit more, get 2 to 5 minutes of physical activity each hour, and the movement and exercise doesn't have to be extremely strenuous. Um, you can even go out and just like cooking, cleaning, all that stuff counts as well. It doesn't have to be necessarily planned movement. But of course, working your way up from there, and trying to ultimately get to 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. That's the general recommendation from most organizations to achieve health benefits.
150 minutes of moderate intensity work exercise per week.
Yep.
And so again, probably like a maybe like a brisk walk, like walking a little faster than normal for basically 150 minutes a week combined.
Correct. Yeah. So you could do like 5 days for 30 minutes, and that
Right.
would be meet your recommendation. The next thing too, of course, incorporating resistance training, extremely important to maintaining the strength of your muscles, helping reduce risks of injury, especially for you know esports players who sit for long periods of time, can help with also improving posture. Things like weight training, body weight training, or yoga. Yoga is very beneficial as well.
So weight training, yoga. So tell me, like, what are some big quick wins regarding weight training and yoga? Like, someone may hear that and think, man, gym membership, free weights. It sounds like a big thing for someone who may not have a background with that, or even if they do have a background with that. And then yoga may just seem like this unknown thing, or like, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, should someone just like buy a video and do some yoga, or like join a club, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think with the resistance, I mean, even if you don't have a gym membership, you can do it all at home. You could do body weight training exercises, body weight squats, body weight push-ups, planks. And then of course with the yoga, like you've got YouTube, so you can get on there. There's tons of free workouts on there from tons of trainers and instructors. So you can find the workouts. I definitely recommend doing that, and it's super easy to do. And you obtain the benefits. Weight training, of course, is probably the more beneficial resistance exercise, I would say, in terms of obtaining benefits. But any of those would be effective.
And what are your thoughts on like those? I've seen those like 7 minute workout apps on your phone. There's like a ton of them, but do you recommend things like that or have any experience with those? That just came to mind.
Yeah, I haven't really personally used any of them, but I mean, if that's what you're into and you enjoy that, then yeah, I say go for it. The bottom line for me is like just find some sort of activity that you enjoy. If you don't like weightlifting, don't go weightlifting. If you
Hmm.
enjoy rock climbing, go rock climbing, and do that. Anything to just get more movement and exercise. And of course, if it's enjoyable, that's great. And I always recommend too, especially with if it's a team and they're in a a similar location, if they can work out together, that's always beneficial because it can help build team chemistry. But of course, if you have friends and stuff like that, definitely work out with your friends. It offers motivation, accountability, and makes it more fun.
Excellent. Well, Jake, this has been fantastic and lots of really good background education in terms of understanding why your physical health is significant as an esports athlete, but then also a lot of really specific practical tips. Do you have anything else you want to share with us before we wrap things up?
I just want to say, definitely just build on this foundation. So focus on your sleep, your nutrition, exercise. That's a solid foundation to go from when it comes to living a healthier lifestyle. Doing this can impact and improve esports performance and also your longevity as well. But I always say, do a healthy gamer is a better gamer.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jake, thanks so much for being with us on the summit. Thanks so much for all the work you're doing to help esports athletes become healthier and perform better and longer.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.